here we are. Welcome, beautiful human beings, to the best books of 2020, the best books that I read this year. Just to be clear, these are not books that came out in 2020, but books that I personally read in 2020. It's been a very long, but also a very short 365 days. Some days it felt like this year would never end, and some days it felt like a year passed in a single day. And I think for a lot of people, reading and art in general, but reading was just something we really clung to this year. And of course, so many people read so much more than usual this year because we had eons of time on our hands where we were encased in our own personal four walls. Like I said, a lot of people turned to art, whether that was film, movies, shows. They picked up hobbies they loved, whether they actually read a whole ton of books, they painted, or they did a whole host of art things, and it's just so beautiful and so special. For me, this year was really different. Dealing this whole year from January until now with a brain injury, I watched 0 movies this year. I didn't have TV. I didn't really have screens. Things like painting and dancing and writing weren't able to happen at all for me this year. My physical reading was extremely reduced. I listened to over 100 audiobooks this year. This year really let me find out even more than I already knew how important to me stories are, how integral language is to my life, and how much books mean to me. I don't really know who I'm thanking, but if you are someone who writes stories, if you are someone who reads them, if you are someone who sits down with your beautiful voice and narrates audiobooks for those of us who can't read them ourselves, thank you. If you are someone who just speaks language and deals in it and uses it to transform and change your everyday life, thank you. I did my makeup even. One final cry of the year. Probably not, there'll probably be another one. Yeah, but just being able to literally sit this year and have someone tell me a story, to sit and listen to someone speak the words that I hold so dear to so many of these books. I just don't really know where I would be without them, because there wasn't a whole lot I could do this year, but it's just so special to me that I can share these books with you that really were just like rocks on the ocean, the wavy, rocky, awful ocean of this year. And here they all are. I really tried to cut them down. It was like a physically painful task trying to narrow them down. I originally thought this was gonna be like a 10 best books of the year video. I quickly found out that was extremely wrong, because I was very happy to discover I had so many. I finally managed, I think, to narrow it down to 17 books, but I do just want to start with a host of honorable mentions, because it physically pains me that I had to cut these books out of this list. So I thought I would just really quickly say those, and then we'll dive right in to the best books of this bad year. All right, honorable mentions that I would just like to really name, and I think these are fantastic books. They all deserve a place on this list, but just for time's sake, so I don't sit here all day, we have Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Kiki's Delivery Service by, her last name is Cadono, I'm so sorry, I can't remember it right now. If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. The Castle in the Clouds by Kirsten Gier. The Blood Spell by C.J. Redwine. The Silk Roads by Peter Frankopan. The Vietnam War by Ken Burns. The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. And Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. Thank you. All right, so yeah, none of those made this like final 17 book cut. I tried not to double up on authors. I tried to kind of include a wide range of genres in this, although honestly these are all just my favorite books of this year. Some of them became my favorite books of all time. Most of these I was able to annotate, which is phenomenal. And let's just get started. Let's get started. Oh, I am so excited for this video. All right. Coming in at number 17 on this list, I listened to all 3 books of this trilogy this year. Started the series in February, finished this series in August, and it was so damn good. It was incredible. The audiobook productions of these books are out of this world, literally, and I just absolutely love them. If you haven't read them, highly encourage you to do so. So coming in at number 17 is The Illuminae Files, the whole series by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I have Gemini here. This is the second book simply because it's my favorite. I think I would give this 5 stars, honestly. It is a multimedia format book. We have interviews, we have like diagrams, we have text files, we have narration, we have emails, we have diary journal art entries, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. This whole series focuses on this evil company called Poetic, and they have just basically tried to bomb and destroy this mining colony called Carenza, and we follow a whole host of young people as they go about trying to get revenge, trying to survive, and trying to save themselves from Poetic, who is determined to hunt down and silence all survivors and eventually basically be able to take everything they want out of this mining colony from these people. It's so well done. I loved every single character in this. I think it is just so gripping, so suspenseful. I have to say, at the end of Obsidio, the last one, I was a little cheesed at the ending, but that was my only complaint basically for this whole series. We have like the emotional distress that the series puts you in. Love it. I just love it. The stakes are always so high. You lose so, it's just Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman just like slit your heartstrings with every single page, and I just got so invested, and I absolutely love this series so much. It provided hours of entertainment, and I'm so thankful to this book. I can't wait to reread because it's one of the most entertaining book series I've ever read. So that is the first book on this list. Thank you very much. Book number 16 is a manga, the first of a series. This also just got me through so much. I have loved these characters since I was very young. I'd never read the manga before, and I thought it was about time, and that of course is Sailor Moon, Volume 1 by Naoko Takeuchi. I absolutely love this. I laughed so hard. I just had the best time of my life reading this book. If you've never heard of Sailor Moon, we follow a group of young girls who basically are trying to defeat evil that keeps invading Earth from outer space, and it's so pure, so wholesome. You just fall in love with absolutely every single one of these characters. They're so dynamic, so funny, so real, and I just love them so much. I just love them so much. This book brought me so much joy. I love it. I cannot wait to continue the whole series into 2021, and so good. Nostalgia, everything. Coming in at number 15 is a book that ever since I read it, I literally almost think about this book every other day, like the plot and just like what actually happened in this book. It's been a book that's haunted my memories and my brain for months since I finished it. I think I read it like in May, and it's absolutely incredible. And that is When We Were Orphans by Kazuo Ishiguro. Wow, this is my first Ishiguro book, and it definitely will not be my last. This just like blew it out of the water. I had no idea what to expect going into this book. We're set in the 1930s, I believe, in Shanghai, and we're following this young man named Christopher Banks. And he is, I guess, kind of retrospectively looking back on his childhood and the disappearance or abduction or missingness or death of his mother and father. Throughout most of this book, you have absolutely no idea what's happening. You are perfectly content with who Christopher is, the world that he's built up, his own world that he's built up for himself, and the theme and the muddle and the weedy grass that is memory that Ishiguro just like absolutely does not clear away for you at all. He only ever adds to this growing tangle of mess that is memory. It is so scary, so beautiful, so haunting. I adored the very kind of blunt, subtle not very flowery writing style, I suppose, but then the plot that eventually took over that writing just absolutely blew my mind. I still have no idea what to make of so much that went down in this book. It was horrifying. It was so scary. You follow him as he tries to delve deeper and deeper. Now that he's an adult and he's a detective and he's back in Shanghai demanding and trying to find the answers of where his parents went. And where he eventually ends up is devastating. This was incredible. It gave me chills, the ending. I just loved it. So that's When We Were Orphans. Next, we have a bit of a similarly, I guess, ambiguous title coming in at number 14, and that is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I read this for the first time in July, and it was also one of our Dark Academics book picks for October. I absolutely loved it. Second time around, I gave it the full 5 stars because I was so impressed. I think this is a book that each time you reread it, it just comes back stronger and stronger, and your feelings toward it just grow and grow. This, I also did not know what to make of so much of it. It was also my first Shirley Jackson. Fell in love, so creepy, so strange, so ghostly and ghastly. I loved it. We're following 2 sisters, Mary and Constance, who live in Blackwood Manor, high above this town that hates them. It is a Gothic tale, and it is so creepy. We know that the rest of their family, aside from their old decrepit Uncle Julian, have died from, we think, poisoning, and Maricat and Constance just make up this duo that, like, so unsettling. The relationship, the writing, the strange missingness of some scenes and parts that, like, you feel as a reader should be there, but that these sisters, it's just their daily lives, how they function, how they live. So creepy. And the ending of this book, once again, I love endings that just leave you sitting there going like, what? I would highly recommend this book. I don't think it's one for everyone because it is so strange in so many different ways, but it was just like the perfect book for me that I was looking for, I think, and I loved it. So that is We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I discovered so many new favorite authors this year, and I picked up so many more of their works that I've either read this year or are still sitting on my bookshelf, and this next author is no different. So this is number 13. Are we on 13? Hope we're on 13, because it is The Broken Wings by Khalil Gibran. More than anything, the writing was what just had to have this book included on this list for me. It was beautiful. This whole book was literally just poetry and pure distilled, like, beauty. The descriptions of nature and of people and of Lebanon, where this book takes place, the country, his words and his way with, like, describing a certain scene or a certain mood or a certain lighting or time of day was just... Thus the appearance of things changes according to the emotions, and thus we see magic and beauty in them, while the magic and beauty are really in ourselves. To be very brief, this book follows a tragic love story set in Lebanon against a lot of religious and political tumult. It follows their tragic love story. They fall in love, they're ripped apart, and it is a tragedy, so it doesn't end very happy. But throughout it all, just his writing, the voice that he gives to Selma in here, the woman who falls in love with our narrator, so powerful, so beautiful. I loved it. Her speeches were some of the most powerful things I've read this year, and that is The Broken Wings. Number 12 is Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. Woo! I love it. My favorite sci-fi of this year. I think at least my favorite adult sci-fi. This was incredible. This took me a long time to read. A lot of this book is extremely dense because Stanislaw Lem just, like, takes sci-fi, I feel, to a whole other level of reality and realness and tries to infuse it with so much of what could actually happen and what could actually be happening. So in this one, we're following this guy named Chris Kelvin and the planet that he goes to explore, to kind of be a scientist and work on the planet and figure out what the heck it is called Solaris. This planet is covered by a huge kind of, I don't really know even how to picture it still. I want to say like a plasmatic ocean that does some strange things. A lot of people have died on this planet, and there's a lot of really scary things going on when he arrives. This was one of the most unsettling books I've ever read, I think. The dialogue between Chris and the 2 other scientists that are staying on this planet, the themes of isolation, madness and like really scary intelligence and things that we can't understand, things that the human brain can't wrap around, forces that are bigger than ourselves, was incredible. A lot of the story is told in really dense essays and journal entries from previous scientists, so that was a lot to slog through, but in the end, just like all the themes of exploration and colonialism and taking over some foreign land, whether it's literally a whole other planet light years away, and the commentary that Stanislaw Lem like just put in there like was absolutely mind-blowing. Chris Kelvin is also one of the biggest idiots I've ever read from this year, but like just every single character in this book was great. The writing of the dialogue was so good, so unsettling and creepy, and I just absolutely adored this book so much. I can't wait to read more from Lem this year, so that is Solaris. Number 11, we have Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. So good. I had no idea what I was getting into reading this book. I had vague premonitions what this would bring, but wow. Also really unsettling. I feel like the best books I read are just the ones that really just get under your skin and like seep into your dreams or nightmares and just really, really affect you. And Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead was so haunting. We are following Janina, who lives kind of on the border between Poland and the Czech Republic. In the winter months, she looks after a lot of the cottages or houses that people kind of leave when it gets cold and they go to the city or somewhere warmer. So she is kind of the caretaker of these cottages. She's also very into astrology and determinism, and she also loves translating the poetry of William Blake, where this title comes from. This book begins on a dark night when her neighbor knocks on her door and lets her know that their other neighbor is dead. He was found in his kitchen and he basically choked to death on this minuscule tiny bone. From there, we're led to believe that there are these vengeful deer who are going around killing people, killing hunters, killing poachers, killing those who eat animals, and this whole book just deals with really creepy deer, which I adore. I love deer. They're one of my favorite animals ever, and I just think it was such a brilliant idea. I loved Janina and hated Janina and like respected Janina and just wanted to like shake her sometimes, but I loved it. This book brings up so many important issues of abuse and love and hate and crime and the way that we perceive criminals and the way that we perceive this like gender identity of criminals and who can commit what crimes. It was so powerful. The writing was beautiful, so creepy, loved it so much. It just meant a lot to me as well, I think. I love literary fiction that focuses so much on the abuse, the consumption, and just the death of animals, because I don't think it's really a topic that a lot of literature or fiction takes, maybe not seriously, but really not to a kind of literary fiction degree, and not a lot of books dedicate their time or energy to exploring the topics and the lives of animals. And this one just did it so beautifully, so loved it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're in the top 10. I guess I could have narrowed it down to 10, but like, I just feel like they all have to be here. So I guess number 10 is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. Also another audiobook production I would highly recommend. It was wonderful. It was a full cast and it features a lot of really famous, wonderful people. I'm not sure if reading the actual book I would have given this the full 5 stars, but just the audiobook took it to like a whole other level. So I actually read a lot of Neil Gaiman this year. A lot of it I loved and a lot of it I didn't love, but The Graveyard Book was hands down my favorite that I read from him this year. So in this one, we're following this boy named Bod, and his parents are murdered and he is brought up in a graveyard by ghosts. It is also a retelling of The Jungle Book by Kipling, and it was phenomenal. Honestly, I think Neil Gaiman has some of his strongest writing in The Graveyard Book. His middle grade books always just hit the hardest for me, and this one was so magical, so emotionally intense. Like, I almost teared up at the end, but then I didn't, but then I almost did, and it was just so good, so sweet, so wholesome, but also so scary as well. And like, I don't know why his middle grades just always scare me the most and creep me out the most, and The Graveyard Book was just so beautiful. I would highly recommend. All right, coming in at number 9, I read this book in July, I think, and I've been thinking about this one for a lot ever since as well. I don't even know how to describe the way it impacted me, because I think this is a book with not really a twist, but a lot in it that just leaves you so breathless and so distraught, I think is a good word. It is so powerful. I can't wait to read it again and read it for myself, because I listened to the audiobook and there was so much in here I wanted to tab and just annotate so much of. But number 9 is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This was also my first Toni Morrison book. I just got to read so many good authors this year, but this is absolutely wow. Toni Morrison's writing style was something that took a long time for me to get used to, at least in Beloved. I'm not sure how it compares to any of her other works. In this one, we are following a woman named Setha, and she has escaped from slavery, but she's of course still very much haunted, and so much of her past is still so present for her. She lives with her daughter, Denver, in this house, and this house eventually comes to be haunted. I don't want to say too much about it. It was just mind-blowing, breathtaking. I feel like this is one of the most like talented books and talented writers that I've ever read, and wow, just absolutely incredible. Yeah, so that is number 9. Number 8, this is a book that made me happy. A lot of these books that I just mentioned, I think, either really unsettled me, scared me, emotionally were so intense and impactful. This next book just made me so happy, and it made me just so curious and like feel so appreciative of life and its vibrant kind of variations and people and the nighttime, and that is After Dark by Haruki Murakami. I think I have a whole reading vlog devoted to this one because it was incredible. It's just so good. Magical realism was like the highlight of my year this year, I think, and I just love how powerful of a tool it is in so many of these books that I've mentioned, and how in other cases it just lets you explore so much of the unexplained or the unspoken in real life. And After Dark is so beautiful. One of my favorite Haruki Murakami books now, one of my favorite books of all time, and it's just so good. We follow a series of interactions on this one night in Tokyo, and it's so magical. Like, it is just glittering and shimmering and full of life and phosphorescence, and the interactions and the relationships and the way that a city works together, and essentially the whole world works together and breathes, and these like veins that are cities and interactions between people and why things happen, and how some small things and a whole host of small things eventually build up and create these causes and effects, and it's just so beautiful. This book did so many weird, quirky things, and I absolutely loved it. It provides you with a soundtrack, it provides you with times of the day and or at night, and it was so good. So that is After Dark. Okay, we're really getting down. Number 7, I read this book in February? I think I read it in February. It's a play, actually. I think it's the only play on here. And just the language was so beautiful. So beautiful. And that is Prometheus Unbound by Percy Bysshe Shelley. I'm not sure if it deserves this high of a spot on this list, but from what I remember many months ago when I read it, I fell in love with it. The romantic language that Shelley uses in here to tell this like really wonderful political tale, essentially, of a Greek myth. He basically takes Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound, the play, the Greek play, tragedy, and turns it on its head in Prometheus Unbound. We get Zeus, as Zeus really is, just this awful tyrant and dictator and this awful person of absolutist rule, awful rule, affecting the health of basically everyone he's overseeing. And you just get Prometheus as the underdog, the character that you really root for to kind of disrupt and dismantle this political system. And it was so beautiful, especially just because like it was told through this Greek myth. We have so many different characters in here. Like I said, the romantic language is just out of this world, and I loved it. Prometheus is just like that essential, tragic person who embodies suffering, and his speeches on suffering and pain just really, really like hit home, and they're such beautiful ways to describe this thing that we all go through. And yeah, so that's why it's this high up, I guess. Number 6 on this list is The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This was also one of the Dark Academics books for November. I loved it. This year I've really also been going on just this huge Gothic journey. I've been able to read so many Gothic tales this year, and The Turn of the Screw is definitely one of my top favorites. I adored it. Once again, I don't think it's a book for everyone because there's so much ambiguity. There's so much like you never know what's going on, and just this negative capability that Henry James forces onto the reader when dealing with these topics and dealing with essentially these like gaps in not only logic, plots, events, missing information. So much of this is just dealing with unknowable and unknowable trauma. It is horrifying. We are following this unnamed governess who goes to Bly Manor to look after these 2 little angels, Miles and Flora, and very quickly they descend into these 2 little demons. They are horrifying. The whole question of whether the governess or the children or Mrs. Gross or anyone sees ghosts, sees specters, is just hanging in the air. There's so much just left to the reader's imagination, and so much of this book, I think, does say more about who's reading it than who's writing it, or about what is written. And it's so, once again, this is a book that I've thought about almost every other day since finishing it, and those ones just have to deserve like the top spots in this because that is so powerful and such a task, and it's so good. Like the themes and the clues and just the way that it's written, it can be incredibly frustrating but also incredibly rewarding. And yeah, this whole book just felt like a really scary puzzle, and I loved it so much. For so long, I'd always heard so much about Turn of the Screw, but I honestly never really knew what it was about, and now it's one of my favorite books of all time. So top five. Number 5 on this list is Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson. Wow. Anne Carson, everybody, Anne Carson. Yeah, I think even before this year, I would call her one of my favorite authors, but now in 2020, she's just been like cemented as one of my favorite authors. I also got to read her translation of Sappho's fragments of poetry, If Not Winter. That was also one of my favorite books, but Autobiography of Red was miles above it. This is also dealing in Greek myth, specifically with the red monster, who is one of the 12 labors of Heracles. And not much is really known about Gerenices except for these excerpts and extracts of, I believe, poetry written by Stesichorus, a Greek writer. And Anne Carson takes this 12th labor of Heracles and transforms it into this haunting love story and romance. I don't know what language Anne Carson speaks. I really don't know what language she speaks, because language isn't what language you speak, I guess. Obviously read all these books in English, but she doesn't speak it like the rest of us. Like, it's just heavenly. I still don't have any words about it. Like, the way that she writes in here, this whole novel is in verse as well. I just don't know how it is so separate and different from anything else I've ever read in my life. Her way of living language and using life to live. It had rained suddenly at supper time. Now sunset was startling drops at the window. Stale peace of old bedtimes filled the room. Love does not make me gentle or kind, thought Geryon, as he and his mother eyed each other from opposite shores of the light. Her voice drew a circle around all the years he had spent in this room. How does distance look is a simple, direct question. It extends from a spaceless within to the edge of what can be loved. It depends on light. This book broke my heart and also built my heart, and that's that on that. Okay, book number 4. I cried because it was so beautiful. Yeah, it's Oscar Wilde. It's The Picture of Dorian Gray. So good. This was like the year of Oscar Wilde for me. I read a lot of his works. I read 2 of his plays. I read The Picture of Dorian Gray. Is that all I read? I guess that's all I read. But I never read Dorian Gray before this year. I don't know how, but wow. I read this in February, and it just still holds the spot of number 4, even after all the rest of the year has passed. The writing, incredible. Unlike anything, period. This book just feels like plush red velvet and looking up at the starry night sky and just collapsing onto really comfortable couches. It was incredible. This book is also one that is so devastating, so sad, so tragic, and just filled with so much beauty in that tragedy and in that fall of Dorian. He gets his picture painted by his friend Basil, and eventually he descends into this world of debauchery and madness and basically just aesthetic. He's just trying to be an aesthetic, and it's really so good. I feel like it's a book I definitely want to read again next year and probably for the rest of the years of my life, but it was so good. So definitely lives up to all of the hype I've ever heard about it, honestly, and it was amazing. So that is number 4. Number 3, the top 3 now, oh my gosh. This is a book that is still working to change who I am and change my life, and I'm just so thankful because this writer's been working for so long on me, working within me with just the words and the ideas and the philosophy. But reading this one, I actually read this in November, and it was so good. That book is The Dark Interval by Rilke. This is a collection of his letters all about death and pain and suffering, and advising basically how to go about experiencing death in your daily life. So incredibly helpful and transformative and beautiful. I cried countless times reading this book. I got to buddy read this with Lucy from Crescent Pages, and that was one of like the best experiences of this year as well. And wow. I tabbed almost every single page because his writing is so beautiful. The ideas he puts down are so beautiful, and basically the whole philosophy of reconciling life and death, beauty and suffering, pain and happiness is just so important. And just like, I think I wish I would have read this sooner, because this book just like got me through so much and is now allowing me to go into my past and get through so much there with these ideas that I've read now, which is really cool. This book tries to undo all of the teaching that basically I think pretty much all of the Western world at least has been taught on death, that it's this awful thing to grieve, to scream about, to cry about. And while you can and you should do all of those things, and that's completely normal, it's not something to hate, and it is the inevitable. It is the other side of life that makes up this circle of our existence, and should only press us deeper into life and to make those experiences we had with someone we have lost mean that much more, and how their passing to this other side of life changes our relationship with them, and how now we carry them within us, and we are tasked with this higher responsibility of continuing everything they were into our own lives. And when talking about our own pain, he just advises you to have so much faith in whatever is causing you to suffer too much, according to us, because we're only ever given that which we can bear. We're never ever given more than that. And to take whatever suffering you have, or pain, or illness, or unhappiness, and lift it up to your eyes, and to be able to see through that suffering into your life and into the lives of others, it's a really valuable experience. And I'm not gonna get into it too much, but it was just, it was like the best friend I could ask for, the best advice I could ask for, and thank you, Rilke. Okay, book number 2. I feel like this one isn't fair because it is a reread for me, so like I'm just gonna slide it on here and you can pretend I didn't, but I did anyway. But I had to mention it because I did reread it this year in October. It is my favorite book it's my favorite novel of all time. I really had to put it on here because it couldn't not be on here. It felt wrong, and that is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Hi. We all know how I feel about this book, but reading it again now really allowed me to go to like the limit of my love, as Rilke would say, for it, and it just was so good. I annotated this copy. I started my Phantom collection in 2020 a few months ago, and I was just the happiest person for the month that I spent reading this book in these pages. If you don't know what Phantom of the Opera is about, you should go read it. It's about this person or ghost or whoever they are. They live in the bowels of the opera house, and when this young sister this young singer named Christine Daae takes the stage and starts to sing and wows all of Paris with her angelic voice, we learn that this could not have been possible without this angel of music. And we learn that perhaps the monster in the bottom of the opera house and this angel of music coming in through Christine's dressing room, teaching her how to sing, may have some connections. So this is my favorite Gothic novel. It's also my favorite detective novel. It's one of the funniest books I've ever read. It's one of the most tragic books I've ever read. It's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. I love every single aspect. Every one of these colors is a different thing, and I love all of them with all of my love. So yeah, I'm not gonna talk too much about it because I probably have spent the most screen time on this channel talking about this book, so it just felt really wrong not to put it on, and I think I would still rank it at the number 2 spot if I had read it for the first time this year. So there she is. Here we are. We have arrived at number 1. My favorite book, the best book of this year, the most remarkable, the most breathtaking, the most well-written, the most magical, the most heartwarming and heartbreaking. I feel like I'm really hyping this up. Okay, what is it? What is number 1? What is the number 1 book? Number 1 is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I have been so intimidated by this book for so long. I've also had really vague ideas of what this book is about for so long, but to explain it really briefly, we have this mythical town called Macondo, and in this town there lives the Buendia family, and we follow them throughout generations of their history and their lineage and this circular existence that they seem to occupy. Their ancestors, be that their sons or their daughters or their nieces or their uncles or whatever, they all seem to be repeating themselves, making the same mistakes, making the same errors, doing the same things, even as the tide in Colombia, where this book is set, changes, and we have political revolutions, we have war, we have civil war, we have these changes in technology and history and language and art, but this Buendia family just seems to be stuck doing the exact same things. It is really beautiful. There's so many aspects in this book that I adored. Magical realism. This is my favorite magical realism book, but it was just like the perfect novel I've ever read. It was the best book I've ever read. Marquez's writing is so beautiful. At times it's so lyrical, it's so powerful, but it also fits the tone of the story so well. The characters in here are all so different, but also so much the same, because of course they all exist in this one little bubble in Macondo. Some of them do leave, but they always return. And as you can see, they all share roughly the same name, especially the men, and it's very confusing at times. It's a book that makes you work so hard at it, not only to focus and pay attention to which character is actually on screen, but also the end of this book. I think I just sat there and like I waited for the same storm that closes this book off to just blow me away and take me away with it as well, because it just felt like it was literally just like coming out of the book and the pages. And this book also deals with so much important history and so many pieces of history that have been that people have tried to cover up, is what I'm saying. And it's so sad and so haunting, and like Marquez's writing of so many of these scenes just leaves you just like speechless. It's a book that I am going to like need. It's a need that I'm gonna need to reread this over and over and over again for the rest of my life. I would love to read it every single year, because this is a book that you can just get like an infinite number of things out of. Every single sentence is just jammed full of life and everything. For that reason and so many more reasons, this is the #1 best book of the year of 2020. I am so happy about it. I can't wait to read more of Marquez. So there we are. There is 2020 in the best books. And there will also be a video coming where I rank all of the classics that I read in 2020. So I guess you know which one will be #1 for that video. It will be 100 Years of Solitude, because this is very much a classic. It is. And it will just be forever on my mind. I've been thinking about it for days and days and months. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know what like your top 3 favorite books of the year was. It was almost an impossible task for me to try and create this list. It took me so long to sit down and try and piece them in order, and I'm still not sure if they're exactly in the correct order, but yeah, I'm just so thankful to all of these authors and all these people and all these people who made it possible to write these books and to have these books and to listen to them. So I will not try to say that I wish you had a good year, because I don't think that's an extremely value-filled thing to say, but I do hope that you have hope and that you are hopeful for the next coming years, and that you're still finding the magic of life and the joy of life. And if books can help you do that, then I hope you find those books, because I did, and without them, I don't know. Thank you so much for coming along on my reading journey this year, or listening journey, I guess it mostly was. I'll see you so soon in my next video. I can't wait to keep making them in 2021, and just a huge thank you to you all. So that is it. That's a wrap. Ciao.